How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Screamers from 1995. This is directed by Christian Duguay, who I believe was the same guy that directed Scanners 2 and 3. So yeah, he did Scanners and now he's directing Screamers. That's gonna be great to try to keep straight in my head. Anyway, this movie stars Peter Weller, who you guys know as RoboCop. Pretty cool to see him here. We also have Roy Dupuis, Jennifer Rubin, and Andy Lauer. And this is based on a short story, The Second Variety, by Philip K. Dick. Philip K. Dick is a really good classic science fiction writer, and he would give us short stories and novels that would become things like Blade Runner, Total Recall, Minority Report. Classic stuff there. And overall, I really did like the original short story, and I was glad that they kept a lot of it in here. A pretty faithful adaptation, especially by Hollywood standards. A lot of the plot points still there. There are a few changes, like in the movie it's on a distant world in deep space and the book is a dystopian Earth. And we also get things where the book was about like a metaphor for the Cold War and also much more about paranoia, and the movie's more about sci-fi action. But that being said, relatively faithful, and I do like that. And speaking of the script, script was written by Dan O'Bannon. That's always great to hear. I really do like Dan O'Bannon. He gave us Alien, he wrote that. And also he wrote and directed Return of the Living Dead, one of my favorite zombie movies. Another Philip K. Dick, Dan O'Bannon project, Total Recall. He wrote Total Recall, or was on the writing team for that. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I think the story was something like Total Recall and Screamers were written around the same time. Total Recall got made and Screamers kind of sat on a shelf for like 10 years. Kinda sad. This movie was stuck in development hell for a long time. And from what I gather, Dan O'Bannon didn't even know it was being made till after the project was done, and his agent told him he got a new writing credit. So yeah, it was in development hell for a long time, and the director, when he picked up the project, did change a few things, and that's why there is a second writer credited. From what I gather, they, rewrote a bit of the script. I really like the movie, but I can't help but wonder what the original O'Bannon script was like. I would guess probably a lot more humor in it. But anyway, when this movie did eventually come out, it wasn't a huge box office hit or anything. Eventually, I guess over time, it did well enough that they did make a direct-to-video sequel, Screamers: The Hunting. But from what I gather, that isn't that great. I will take a look at it. I haven't seen it yet, but it does have a bit of a reputation. But anyway, this movie has developed a good bit of a cult following, and a lot of people really try to tell people about this movie, and it's a shame that it didn't do better because there's a lot of stuff that really does work. Peter Weller is really great in this movie as a jaded military guy, and even though we have seen characters like this before, he just has a bunch of charisma in his role. The world is also this really cool, run-down, isolated, war-torn planet. That's really nice, and the robots in here are terrifying, which I love. I love me some good, dark, grungy sci-fi with a good dose of horror thrown in there as well. So yeah, I thought this was really fun. Yeah, the movie definitely has some problems with it, and we'll talk about those as we go on, so it's not perfect or anything, but I watched it again to do this review, and I have to say I liked it a little bit more this time. And that's always a sign of a good movie, is that if you do a rewatch and you find yourself liking it a little bit more, that's a sign it's growing on you, it's doing its job, it's being good. That's cool. Anyway, without further ado, let's take a little bit of a look at the plot. I won't be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points, and every now and then I'll break things down and analyze them a bit. But don't worry, I won't talk about the end. Anyway, we have this mining colony, and there's a mineral on this planet that could solve the energy crisis. It's very powerful, but when they start mining the mineral, massive amounts of radiation shoot out. The whole planet is toxic now, and people have to smoke these special red cigarettes that are designed to detoxify them. But when this happened, a sort of war broke out between the employees, the engineers, the scientists, and the company that wants them to just go in there and mine the chemical anyway. And the wars raged on for years with no end in sight. However, at the beginning of the movie, a messenger from the company comes over, and he has a message saying, hey, we want to enter into negotiations for peace. Good deal there. Unfortunately, the messenger is eaten by a screamer. What's a screamer and why did it eat him? A screamer is a robot. It burrows underground, and you see a trail of dust that kicks up as it's coming towards you. So think like a Terminator version of Bugs Bunny, which might not sound scary until you see the movie. It really does work. It keeps these things mostly in the shadow, but you see it coming at you. It leaps up right in your face, and these things scream, hence the name of the movie, Screamers, because engines whirling, big circular saws popping out of the sand right at your face and limbs. The scene where the messenger dies is pretty horrific. It just really shows you what these things are capable of. But we also find out that when they got them from Earth, they basically had the initial setup thing, they put it in the ground, pushed a button, and walked away. These things automatically make themselves, they get their own materials, they build themselves, and they modify themselves. Unchecked, they adapt to the situation they're in and change themselves. Unsupervised, underground, self-modifying. There's no way this could go wrong. Oh, and also they eat people for fuel. That's pretty bad. But anyway, they get the talks about peace, which are good, and there's also a hologram they get where one of the generals say that they found this ore on another planet that's not as radioactive, which, yeah, sounds like the war is going to be over. But then a ship crashes, and on that ship is a new recruit, the only survivor of the crash, and he says, what? That general disappeared 2 years ago. That can't possibly be him. And Peter Wellers thinks something's up. Maybe there's a plot to keep the war going. Maybe they're being forgotten about. And overall, I have to say one of the movie's flaws is all this politics at the beginning. To be honest, the first time when I watched this movie, I got pretty lost pretty quickly. And it really doesn't matter. All you need to know is that Peter Weller's suspicious, and in turn, he decides to take the messenger up on his offer. Well, he's dead. He decides to take the note up on its offer and go check out the other base and try to go and do peace talks. So you really didn't need all this complicated backstabbing, backstory, betrayal, and stuff like that. The director of this movie, from what I gather, used to be a reporter, And I think that's probably why we got all this unnecessary, complicated politics in here. Yeah, I don't think we needed that. Peter Weller's just gonna follow the message, what you would have done anyway, even if we haven't had the hologram in the plane crash. Anyway, along the way, he takes the soldier from the plane crash, a young rookie, and he meets a boy in the middle of the desert that is the sole survivor of his colony. So we get this fun little trio going to the enemy base, which they'll eventually find is completely deserted except for 3 remaining survivors. The place absolutely got wrecked, and it turns out that's because of the Screamers. You know how they were working and modifying themselves and advancing unchecked? Well, they can now disguise themselves as people. You don't know who's gonna be a Screamer, and the enemy guys, you just met them a second ago. Yeah, paranoia sets in there. So you have to kind of team up with these enemies that, enemy of my enemy and whatnot, and try to get back to your home base and hopefully work something out. Screamers are wrecking the place, and the good guys, the shield that they had, obviously the Screamers are well beyond that, and they're going to be attacking their very own creators now. It's a pretty cool concept. When a lot of people write robot stuff, I get tired of all the robot cliches, but I think Dick always did his robot stories a lot better and a lot more interesting. Dick, he wasn't really known for writing straight horror, but there's so much horror and paranoia in his stories. He also wrote another story, Imposter, which would also get a movie, which I hope to cover relatively soon, about a guy who the government says was replaced with a robot with a bomb inside its chest, and he says he's not a robot, but the government says you wouldn't know if you are or not. That idea, that paranoia, that self-identity of, am I real? That really... I love Dick's work. What he does with robots, what he does with paranoia, what he does with horror outside of the horror genre. Really, really cool stuff. And the idea that these robots are freaking terrifying in their original state, and terrifying in their other states as well. The first one of the disguised people that's revealed, that's a terrifying character. But also, they're robots that are, they were designed to defend one group of people as a weapon, and that's why they eat. But now they just want to eat, and they're eating their creators. Like, the idea that you're a tool, and you have this purpose that drives you, but you're no longer really needed. You're doing actually the opposite of what they wanted you to do. So a mission that got carried out well past its logical extremes, that's a really cool idea, and I really do like that. So yeah, I like the robots, I like the paranoia, I like the horror. And I guess other stuff, I mentioned it earlier, with the characters, Peter Weller is really great in this movie. He's gruff and sarcastic, and like I said, we've seen this character a bit, but Peter Weller just has enough charisma to carry this role. A lot of other actors, it just would have been cliche. And Peter Weller has lines like, "What are you coming, or do you have a piano tied to your butt?" How did he pull off that line? That's crazy. And he does it just really well with all his charisma. This jaded military guy that wants the war to be over but doesn't believe it's ever going to be. That's really cool. Now with the other characters, you get them, like the young guy who just joined and he thinks he's going to make a difference, which really contrasts with Weller's jadedness. And then on the enemy team, you get like the more nerdy guy and you get the tough guy. And I do want to say, you know, I like them, I get them, and they're cool and distinctive and interesting enough. At the same time, if a lot of the side characters got eaten by a screamer, I don't really care that much. So the side characters aren't necessarily the best or the most fleshed out, but they're not annoying and they do have enough of a personality behind them. There is a romantic interest in this movie, and like towards the end as things get really bad, they act like this romance is such a big deal, and I'm like, didn't you just meet her like a day or two ago? And to be fair, that might be saying something about Weller's character, that he's just desperate to latch on to one good thing, no matter how, you know, fleeting it is. But yeah, the romance, a little forced in this movie. So, other than that though, the movie's biggest strength, atmosphere. This movie looks so cool. It's a big desert planet with some patches of snow, which I'm guessing is like a nuclear winter or something. But you get that sense of abandonment, that sense of isolation, where it's mostly nothing but a few small, mostly deserted, mostly destroyed camps and old factories. You know, you get a sense of the new history, the military, the things that have been running amok, and you get a sense of the old history. There's one point where they go through an old room and you see a model, you know, like they were trying to show off what the place could be, but it's all deserted and has some blood on it, and you're like, you get the history, you know, a deserted cafeteria and there's messes and you get like, oh man, something bad happened here. Worn out, run down, destroyed, grungy sci-fi with grungy, creepy, terrifying robots haunting it. That's cool. And, you know, I mentioned how much I love the robots earlier, but they're great, and I love pairing the robots with this set. This movie just looks so cool. Now, that being said, there, like, with the robots, the special effects, there's a lot of practical stuff, and it mostly holds up, and there's really great creepy visuals and really cool ideas, and I really love the robot designs and even little things like when he takes chips out of them and all the chips are different designs. They look really cool. But again, when we talk about one of the movie's flaws, not all the special effects hold up. There's definitely some stuff that are cut out of a green screen. And every now and then, like most of this movie's effects are good, but every now and then you'll get a really bad old school special effect. So, mostly really good. Not always. But anyway, like I said, I know this movie has flaws. The politics are needlessly complicated. Every now and then a special effect doesn't hold up. And not all the side characters are, you know, super engaging. I mean, I like them all, but yeah, they are... Not all of them are great. So I know that this movie has flaws, but that being said, despite that, I really do like it. Again, keyword atmosphere and, you know, crazy great concept. And I did like it a little more this time. So despite its flaws, it's something that I really do like, and it really has grown on me again with this new rewatch. And overall, I definitely see why this movie has a cult following, and I can definitely recommend it. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Philip K. Dick playlist. You can see my reviews for Blade Runner, Adjustment Bureau, and Paycheck in there. It is a bit of a young playlist, but I will be working and hopefully I can add more to it soon. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Philip K. Dick playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.